NASA says two astronauts stranded on the International Space Station after their Boeing spacecraft ran into trouble will not return to Earth until February 2025. Sunita Williams and Barry Wilmore will be brought back on a SpaceX Dragon capsule. Their mission had been expected to just last about 8 days before the Boeing Starliner was affected by a string of problems. The stricken spacecraft will now be brought back earlier without the crew. Boeing released a statement saying here, quote, "We continue to focus first and foremost on the safety of the crew and spacecraft. We're executing the mission as determined by NASA, and we're preparing the spacecraft for a safe and successful uncrewed return." For more, here now is our science editor, Rebecca Morell.
The start of a mission that was supposed to last just 8 days on the International Space Station.
Lots of cheering here in the room, big hugs.
But NASA astronauts Butch, Wilmore and Suni Williams have now found out their stay has been extended to a total of 8 months.
Getting a beautiful view now of Starliner.
Boeing's Starliner spacecraft they arrived on has been deemed too risky to take them home, so it will come back with no one on board, and they'll return to Earth in a SpaceX capsule instead.
Space flight is risky, and so the decision to keep Butch and Suni aboard the International Space Station and bring the Boeing Starliner home uncrewed is a result of a commitment to safety. Our core value is safety.
And liftoff of Starliner.
This was the first test flight for Boeing's Starliner spacecraft with a crew on board, but it had problems with some of its thrusters and several helium leaks, which delayed docking. Engineers at Boeing and NASA have spent months trying to overcome these technical issues, but they couldn't fix them, so instead they've turned to SpaceX. But because of scheduling, it means the astronauts won't return until February next year.
It's disappointing that they're not coming home on Starliner, but that's okay. It's a test flight. That's what we do. They knew those risks going in, but we keep them very busy. There's a lot of science and research going on the International Space Station.
NASA selected 2 companies to ferry their astronauts, SpaceX and Boeing. SpaceX won a contract worth $2.6 billion for its Crew Dragon spacecraft. Boeing got more for Starliner, $4.2 billion. SpaceX launched its first crewed mission in 2020, but it's taken Boeing 4 more years for its maiden flight. So far, SpaceX had launched 9 crews for NASA, but Boeing's first mission won't finish as planned. The capsule is returning to Earth empty. In a statement, Boeing said, "We continue to focus first and foremost on the safety of the crew and spacecraft. We're executing the mission as determined by NASA, and we're preparing the spacecraft for a safe and successful uncrewed return." NASA has emphasised its commitment to Boeing's spacecraft. They say they're certain it will fly again.
Go forward into Starliner.
But for Butch and Suni, their stay in space continues. Rebecca Morell, BBC News.
Yeah, for more on their stay in space, I spoke with Leroy Chow, a former NASA astronaut and engineer. First of all, can you just put us inside the heads of these 2 astronauts who went into space expecting to be there for 8 days, and now it looks like they will be there instead for 8 months?
Sure. Well, of course, nobody likes surprises, especially big surprises like this. But having said that, astronauts like being in space. And although Butch and Suni were looking at an 8 to 10 day mission, which had now blossomed into over 2 months, and now that's looking like it's going to be 8 months, or it will be 8 months. Having said that, they're also professionals. They're very much consummate professionals. They've both flown long durations aboard the ISS before, so they know how to operate the vehicle. They know how to do most of the experiments, and they've already been pitching in. So essentially, they're getting another long duration flight. The only thing is, like you said, they weren't expecting it, so I'm sure it impacted some other parts of their lives, but they're seem to be adjusting very well, and I think they're going to do great.
Yeah, you wonder if anybody left a carton of milk in the refrigerator or something like that. Look, just going back to the spacecraft itself, and we heard the statement from Boeing, NASA's been speaking about this as well. What do you make of the decision here to essentially keep the astronauts there until a different spacecraft can come get them? Is this being overly cautious, or do you think this is the right decision?
I think this is absolutely the right decision, and nobody in the business is surprised by this decision. Starliner has been behind schedules, but had a lot of technical and budget problems. Finally got into space, and then suffered these failures on the thrusters. They seem fairly minor. Testing was they were unable to come up with or agree on a root cause. They saw some disturbing problems related to overheating. Apparently, parts of the spacecraft around the propulsion system are getting hotter than they had expected, and so it's causing some potential problems with the seals. And so this was the right decision. I mean, I think in an emergency, you would do the risk reward and of course try to bring them down on Starliner. Although now the decision has been made that they're going to wait. They're going to prepare the Dragon that is up there, the SpaceX vehicle, to be able to come back with 6 instead of 4 in this period of time between when the Starliner is undocked in September to come down without people on board, and then the Crew 9 vehicle comes up, which will also be the vehicle that brings Butch and Suni down in February.
I have a question about the Starliner, actually. So you mentioned it's going to be going back to Earth unmanned. First of all, how is that possible? And then secondly, I know that everyone was really excited because the Starliner was going to be making a different sort of landing than what you usually see. Is that still going to happen? Will they get the chance to try that out?
Yes, actually, Starliner, I believe, is going to land in Utah. I believe it's still in Utah at the landing zone there on the ground, and so I believe that will still happen. Yeah, they took them literally, a while. I mean, 2 months to come up with a software patch, upload it, and test it on the vehicle because previously it did not have the capability to come down autonomously. But now they believe they can bring it down. So the plan is to undock the Starliner sometime in September and go ahead and bring it back, probably for that land landing.
This was Boeing's really first attempt at a crewed mission. It hasn't exactly gone according to plan. Where do you think this leaves Boeing now and its attempts to really catch up to SpaceX and get its own space program going?
Sure. No, this is no question a big black eye for Boeing. Like I said before, they're behind schedule, over budget. Boeing to date has spent about $1.6 billion of its own money to kind of keep the Starliner and get it going and get it to where it is now. Now they were going to have to try to fix the problem. It is undoubtedly going to involve some redesign. They're going to have to shoulder the bulk of that cost. NASA may contribute a little bit to it, but by and large, they're on the hook with their contract to develop a working vehicle. And, NASA wants Starliner to be successful because NASA wants more than just one source or one provider to bring astronauts to and from ISS. So SpaceX has been very successful, almost 4 years now, I believe, or right around 4 years in doing that. NASA's eager to bring Starliner online as well.